This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, happy Fantopia Friday, my friends from all over the world. This is Erica Lukes, and I'm always happy to be here and spend my Friday evening with my favorite people on the planet. I want to give a shout out to my friends in chat, Jeff, Libertas, Northern UFOs. All of you really are the reason that I'm here, and it is so amazing to know that you are out there supporting me and that we all care about quality research and about finding the answers and weaving our way through all of the disinformation and the marketing ploys and the organizations that, are in it to make money. So we are doing our thing. We're going to find answers. We're going to find the best of the best. And speaking of that, the countdown to Hessdalen has begun, and I can't even stand it. I am just beyond excited about this opportunity to go to Norway and to visit Hessdalen, which is a sleepy little village in Norway. And 35 years ago, the town was besieged with UFO sightings. They made a media appearance and, of course, became the laughingstock of the world. But Erling Strand, my friend and colleague, was bright enough to understand that he needed to get a team of researchers in there. They went there, conducted a 2-week field study, and found enough important information that they began to obtain funding. 35 years later, they have a huge program. They have documented and researched. They have now identified 4 different types of light phenomena that behaves or is intelligently controlled. And this is huge. So I will be arriving in Norway on Monday. Erling Strand will be picking me up from the Trondheim airport, and then we will be driving to Hessdalen, where we will be staying, and I will be conducting interviews with the people at Science Camp, the university students that will be there. There are 200 of them. And I will also be interviewing Erling and his team. I will be doing a little documentary and posting videos about this to get information to you, because I know in my heart that this is the most important research that we have done to date with regard to the UFO phenomena. We have to get this out there. We have to really look at the way we're researching things, and we need to share this, because we can, join investigative organizations and sit behind our computers and investigate until the cows come home. But why do we need to do that when we have this groundbreaking research that they're doing? We need to reframe the way we're addressing this issue, and I look forward to doing that. And I also want to say, Jeffrey Cox, thank you for being a sponsor to my trip. That means the world to me. You are such a good friend, and I look forward to sharing all of this with you. So make sure you check out Facebook, check out Twitter. I will be posting updates from there. And you know that I'm going to see something anomalous. I'm so stoked. I can't wait. And on that note, I want to talk a little bit about the amazing people we have here in Utah. When I first started really pushing to investigate, and I became MUFON state director, I found a core group of people that were really on the forefront, that had been pushing for disclosure for a long time. Oddly enough, one of those people was a friend, a lifelong friend, a very dear friend of my grandmother, Merrill Cook, who was at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. And also I found Dr. Joe Buchman, who spoke at a MUFON meeting, and it is so cool to have people that are in politics, that are pushing the boundaries, that understand that there is a need to really hold people's feet to the fire. Dr. Buchman is on my show tonight, and he is brilliant. We were at the Utah UFO Festival speaking together. He holds a PhD from Indiana University and MBA from Purdue. After earning tenure, he left traditional higher education to develop online MBA finance courses for the University of Chicago and pursues his dreams of adventure travel. Solar eclipses. I bet you $20 he saw the solar eclipse. You've got to ask him about that. He has been to Mongolia. He drives the entire U.S. interstate highway in an RV. That sounds totally cool, Jeff. We've got to do that. He has had a lifelong interest in cosmology and UFOs. It led him to serve with 6 members of the United States Congress on the 2013 Citizen Hearing on Disclosure Investigative Committee in Washington, D.C. I know you've all heard about that. His research has been presented to the American Psychological Association, the National Association for Broadcasters, TEDx, and Burning Man, the Roswell UFO Festival, the Society for Scientific Exploration, Freedom Fest, and the SETI Institute in Mountain Valley, California. He has served as the chair of the Libertarian Party Platform Committee and on the National Party's Financial Audit Committee. He was the Libertarian candidate for the United States Congress in 2008 and is running in the Utah special election for District 3 as the Libertarian candidate. I mean, honestly, this is just too amazing. We need to get him on here because he has so many wonderful attributes, and he has just so much to offer. We are trying to get a hold of him because he has been just running around feverishly, and he was hoping to get to his computer, but we're going to try him one more time. We're going to call him. So Tina, give him a buzz one more time, see if we can get him on, and we will see what we can do. But while we're waiting to get Joe on, Dr. Buchman, I want to just say that I want to tell you a little bit about my nerd gear. So I have got the most amazing equipment, and my BFF, who is an audio engineer, has been working with me, and he does also the videos that I am currently doing, the video series that I'm going to release and have been releasing on YouTube. He's helped me, and so I have got 4 different video cameras, and I also have 2 different night vision camcorders. I have my EMF detectors, tri-field meters, lasers. I have a few other things up my sleeve. Lavalier mics. I've got the whole thing going on. So the quality of my videos is going to be exceptional. And also there will be another fellow over there who has done some videos. I'll be sharing this information with you, but he is doing a documentary while we were over there as well. So this is going to be cool. And if you can ever get over there to Norway, I know that Erling Strand will be absolutely wonderful. And, hopefully we can get that going on. So, Joe, if you are listening, make sure that you call. You can call into the hotline, which is 702-425-9230. And you can get on. I know we're having a little bit of trouble reaching you at your landline, so make sure you can do that for us. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep talking. So I want to say, again, when I think about research and I think about what we have going on, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Buchman about this tonight, but as all of you know, and we talk about this, everyone in my chat room, we talk about the major dysfunction that we have going on in ufology. And for me and for Jeff Cox and for Northern UFOs and all of you who listen to the show, you understand that we need to make a huge change in the way we're approaching this. And I believe that ufology in the United States of America is pretty dismal at best. It's very fractured, and in my opinion, as you know, because you've heard my shows many, many times, the reason this is fractured is because we have organizations like MUFON who get all the data, hide it, don't do anything with the data, and they most certainly don't do anything other than worry about making money for the organization. And I feel that the time has come, and we heard John Greenwald on my show a couple weeks ago mentioning that he is starting a new organization that will be taking a much more progressive approach to research, which is wonderful, and then working with people that, like John Greenwald, like Erling Strand, like Dr. Massimo Teodorani, who's been on the show, and I highly recommend you replaying the episode in the KCOR archives of Dr. Teodorani. But these are the people that we are going to be working with, and all of us are going to do this together, and we really are going to push ufology, this research in America, to a new level. So I'm excited we're going to do that. Now, finally, we have our special guest on the phone. You made it.
Can you hear me now?
I can totally hear you now. And let me
that's
just say,
really awesome.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, it is. It's a little nuts here because I agreed to help out a friend who was having another crisis, and I'm actually in a room at another place where I volunteer, and they're pulling chairs out of the room. There are other people around, and it's not the ideal Skype radio studio environment I had intended to have for you tonight, but we'll make it work.
But you know what? You actually sound really, really good. And I was excited to have my friends from Utah here. This is such an important state.
It is. It's got a unique culture, and certainly the predominant religion here has a history of a theology that included life on other planets. They even have names for some of them. The main one was a planet named Kolob, and that's where in that religious tradition the creator of this Earth originally evolved, was a human being like us, and became a creator of this planet and of what's happening here. And so one of the famous presidents of the Mormon Church once said, "As man is, God once was; as God is, man may become." And so there's this idea of this history of lots of people who've evolved into gods and run other Earths like this all over everywhere. So, when you live in a state where that's part of at least the history of the theology, I don't think it's taught much anymore, but it's not hidden. It's certainly part of Mormon tradition and belief in the past, at least, if not the present. But I think for some, at least in the present. There's even a hymn here that goes, "Let's all hie to Kolob." H-I-E is a verb we ought to bring back. I think it must mean go there. So yeah, I live in a state with a name of a planet out there.
I better go back to church.
Yeah, I am not a member of the predominant faith here in Utah, but I am religiously curious in terms of the culture here and some of the history here. There's also Kolob Canyon, I think, is down in the Zion Park area, and it's a beautiful part of Utah. And if the listeners here to the show tonight have never visited Utah, it is a little bit like going to another planet. Just come here.
That's interesting, and you're saying that, and I'm just thinking in my mind that perhaps Jeff and I should look at and see what types of sightings have taken place in that area, and then, what the history of the church in that area is. That would be really quite fascinating.
Yeah, and that's beyond the level of detail that I know. But yeah, I enjoy Utah. I wasn't born here. I grew up out in Indiana. And I know you remember part of my story was when I was a sophomore in high school, I built a laser and fooled around with holography and entered a science fair. And I got about a half a dozen awards. My mom saved them all. My dad died about a year ago, so I just got all this stuff back. But one of the awards I had won was from the Air Force for engineering. And so that included a free, all-expenses-paid tour of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1974. And I can remember the two Air Force officers that came and picked me up. I was in southern Indiana, just north of Louisville, Kentucky. So it was about an hour and a half, a little less than a 2-hour drive away. And that was one of the first big trips I took away from home without my mom and dad. And I can remember going up the interstate. Highway system was still pretty new back then. But I don't remember anything about the tour of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it's a longer story, one I've told at Roswell and at the Society for Scientific Exploration and other presentations. But moved here in 1993, and then left in 99 for 4 years, went back to Indiana, and then came back here again in 2003, and I've been here ever since. I love Utah. It's that kind of high desert feeling, but surrounded by mountains, and a big bowl of mountains both to the east and the west.
It's a beautiful place, you're right. I think, though, for me, and I have to ask you about this, and I know that you are probably as concerned about Dugway Proving Ground as I am. I mean, what is your take on that?
I have no idea. The UFO Hunters show was here, and they did an episode about Dugway, and they interviewed me for it at the time. This was, in 2006 or 7, I think. I was working for Western Governors University, and I remember I left my office there to run out to the Great Salt Lake, where they interviewed me on the shore of the Great Salt Lake with Bill Burns and those guys. And then whatever I had to say didn't make it off the cutting room floor. Unfortunately, I wasn't in the show that was broadcast. But we spent a couple hours out there talking about it. And, a lot of people think it's the new version of Area 51, but safer for the military folk, more isolated. It's surrounded by what we know are a lot of really nasty 55-gallon drums of chemical and biological warfare agents developed in the 1940s. They built a big high-temperature incinerator out there to burn all this stuff up. And they have sirens and things around that they test from time to time. And they haven't set them off for an emergency yet in case the incinerator failed in some way. So that tends to keep your casual tourist away, right?
Well, but there are a few brave people that wander out there, amazingly enough.
The uncasual tourists. And so I know Alien Dave is one of them, and others will go out there and camp out. And there's some Native American land around there, but there's also, I've driven around, not the whole perimeter, but chunks of it, and there's a lot of chain link fence with a lot of signs that say unexploded ordnance, keep out. It was a bombing test range. Not far from there in Wendover is where the Enola Gay was based before that airplane was used to drop the bombs on Japan, the first bomb on Japan. And that's where they practiced dropping concrete shapes, they call it, of the atomic bomb. It weighed the same, but it was just a big chunk of concrete, the same shape as the bomb. And so they were practicing bombing out there. But the rumors are that it's a base that can only be accessed by air. And so unlike Area 51, where there's the famous Groom Lake Road, the dirt road that goes off of Highway 375 out to the west, or the back gate behind Roswell, or there's apparently another entrance out there by, I think, Indian Springs or Beatty, Nevada. Here in Utah, apparently it's a base that's only accessible by air. There's no surface level access, and then that gives it a boundary that's large enough that you can't see into it. There's no Teekaboo Peak or any equivalent. So that's why some folks think that may be where we do our most secret stuff now, is here. About an hour west of the Salt Lake Airport, maybe a little more.
Yep. And the thing that's really interesting to me is to see how many aerospace companies and defense contractors are moving into Utah.
Right.
So who knows what they're doing out there, but it's always shocking to me that the average person that lives in Utah doesn't even know that place exists.
No, they know about Hill Air Force Base, and Hill has a museum with an SR-71 in it. And I think they know that there's a lot of military aircraft flying around in that airspace. But what's on the ground, nobody knows. I don't think Google Earth takes pictures of it either.
Surprisingly enough, no. And, we've got some of the most restricted airspace in the world, especially now that the NSA is here.
Yeah. which is Camp Williams, the National Guard camp, just kind of between Salt Lake and Provo there, just off of I-15, is where they've built probably what is the closest thing in reality to Skynet from Terminator movies. And seriously, it's the most concentrated collection of silicon-based computing that may or may not be on the verge of becoming self-aware. Who knows? My impression is what they're doing there is just recording everything, every phone call, this phone call, every medical record, every bank transfer. And I don't think they're spying on us in the sense that they're sifting through all of that. I think they archive it for the purpose that if they come up with a criminal investigation on someone, they can then go back and pull all those phone calls and records for that individual out of this huge, unimaginable storage machine out there. And, I'm a libertarian. I'm running as a libertarian for the special election out here for the United States Congress. I'm quite concerned about the diminution of our civil liberties and our privacy in the face of a tyrannical government, things that our founders tried to prevent, 250 years ago, things that we fought wars over to keep from happening so that we could have our privacy and our liberty. And so that NSA facility concerns me. But my gut feeling is there's no way to sift through and monitor everything. And I think it might be a not completely illegitimate law enforcement activity to have archived all that stuff and then be able to pull it up for people of interest, maybe going back for months or even years. But it's not fully revealed what's there. But you do have hints, like it takes something like 5 million gallons of water to cool it every day. So what kind of computer needs that?
Well, absolutely. And that is really, we are on the verge of so much. And I think it's just people, we're all barking up the wrong tree right now. And so we need to kind of figure things out and look in the right places. And this, on the verge of all of this is really frightening. You're right. But we're going to get ready to take a break. And when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about the rest of your story from your visit to Wright-Patterson, because that is really quite interesting because you don't remember a lot of it. So we're going to do that and to tell everyone where to find you.
My campaign website is www.gotol. G-O-T-O-L. Go to L. I'm telling the people of Utah to go to L, which stands for Life, Love, Liberty, Legalization, and Let Us Alone. So it's www.gotol.vote. .vote is a new domain name for candidates, and I decided to be kind of cutting edge on that. My opponents are all .com, which means they're for sale. But go to L and then .vote.
All right, we are getting ready to take our first break for the evening. I'm Erica Lukes. You are listening to Dr. Joseph Buchman. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. Bowl for Life is a non-profit organization founded in 2013 by Chuck Gardner with one simple goal: to grow the sport of bowling worldwide. Over the years, Bowl for Life has given out thousands of dollars in scholarships to youth bowlers around the world. Our focus is to nurture integrity, honesty, professionalism, as well as respect into bowlers both young and old. You can help us by going to bowlforlife.com. Even the smallest donation goes a long way to breaking down the barriers and helping us assist people of all ages to improve their skills as well as knowledge of the game. Bowl for Life is happy to be partnered with other great organizations like the Youth Education Services Fund, as well as the United States Bowling Congress, with many spectacular integrated events planned in the near future. To learn more, go to bowlforlife.com. That's bowlforlife.com.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis Coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
I'm jumping in with my clothes on.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Just honestly trying to give him the benefit of not going mental.
No, he's just a normal person who was wearing the wrong footwear at the wrong time, lost his temper, and
got mental.
And, okay.
All right. Just checking.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
America's favorite
radio station
just keeps getting better.
Hello, people. Aaron Hunter here, host of the show Real Paranormal Activity, where we tell the true stories of the paranormal from people like you. We also interview authors, mediums, psychics, and investigators as we dive headfirst into the murky waters of the paranormal. We discuss subject matters such as orbs, shadow people, paganism, the occult, and the demonic. Join me on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, here at KCOR Digital Radio Network.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Well, welcome back, everyone, and happy Fantopia Friday. You are listening to the best digital broadcasting network, KCOR, and I want to thank Tina Marie for being the best station owner and the best producer who rolls with everything, and she really is a rock star. I adore her, and I appreciate the working with a female, and I appreciate the personal touch and the commitment that she has, and very ethical and responsible. That's great. I want to thank all of you and ask all of you for your help. Please share the UFOclassified.com website. Let people know about the show. I want to get as much good information out there as I can, and that is why I spend a lot of my free time, and even time I actually should be working, dedicated to talking with the world's leading researchers, hoping to make a difference however I can. For me, I choose not to write a book. Radio is my medium, doing radio, doing television, because I'm comfortable and I can interview people and you can hear the inflection in their voice and tell whether they're sincere. And I just think, for me, this is my platform and I love it. So thank you for supporting me. My guest this evening is one of my friends from Utah, and I love that. We've got a lot of stuff going on here, and Dr. Buchman was telling us before we went to the break, we were talking about Dugway, we were talking about the NSA, and the fact that Utah has some of the most restricted airspace in the world. Interestingly enough, when I had a series of sightings over the Salt Lake Valley, some of these sightings were taking place in the area that is you just don't fly. So this is very interesting to me. But Joe, Dr. Buchman, thank you. I keep calling you Joe. I just want to be.
Fine.
I don't know.
Call me Joe.
Oh,
my dad was a medical doctor. My daughter is a medical doctor. I just have a PhD, so I don't even feel like a real doctor. It's all good.
Well, apparently I'm loving the Joe, so thank you for being so easygoing.
Well, I've got, as you know, because we were talking off air, I've got like 3 things going tonight, and I'm juggling being on the air with you because I love radio too. My first job was in radio. Actually, I was first on the air in 9th grade. We did a half an hour every 3 weeks on WREY AM in New Albany, Indiana, and then it re-aired on WNAS later. And we do this half-hour show every 3 weeks out of this English class that I got picked out of with a handful of other people. And Paul Marsh was the English teacher back then. He wrote these wacky scripts, and the other 2 junior high schools would like read Shakespeare or poetry or essays, and we would just do comedy. It was like Firesign Theater. So I was Larry Lip, the hip lip with the most zip. BJ, the DJ, and we had the bulletin board news. There's always plenty of news hanging around the bulletin board, and it was just nuts. And then my high school, New Albany High School in New Albany, Indiana, had the first licensed radio station to a high school in the country. Went on the air in 1948, and so we run that thing 24/7. We did play-by-play for all the games. We did music and news and other shows. So I had a fantastic experience by the time I graduated. And in 1976, that fall, I took a job with WXVW doing midnight to 6 with the Herb Jepko talk show. And I can go on now for the next 5 hours about that, but your listeners are probably somewhat more interested in ufology. But I'll make the connection to Frank, what was his name? And Candy Jones replaced Herb Jepko. I'm spacing it now. Long John Neville. Long John Neville and Candy Jones replaced Herb. And Long John was a guy who in New York City had done a lot of stuff on UFO interviews back in the 1950s. And a lot of that's up on YouTube now. So I was talking to Jimmy Church about it in Roswell a couple of years ago. He was going back and listening to all these Long John Neville interviews from back then. But I was 18 years old and listening to him live near the end of Long John's career. Actually, the very end, because he died of cancer. And that's when Mutual Broadcasting went looking for someone to take his place and found Larry King. Now people have at least probably heard of Larry King. So this was pre-Larry King on the Mutual Radio Network, late night radio in the 70s. But in 74, these 2 Air Force officers come, and I can remember going up the interstate, a very vivid memory of passing a military convoy. And it was deuce-and-a-half trucks with the big green tarps over them and the big tires and the Army green Jeeps, and a white 4-door car pulled in the middle of all these military trucks. And we're just in the passing lane. And the Air Force guy says, that's illegal. I said, no, I didn't know that is illegal. He says, yeah, it's illegal for a civilian to get in the middle of a military convoy. They're not supposed to do that. And I said, well, it's not really a law if people haven't heard of it. So I guess I was a libertarian even then, right? Like, it's unfair to have laws that nobody's even been told about. How do you know? Does anybody ever heard that it's illegal to get in the middle of a military convoy? I've never seen that in the driver's license exam. So I have that clear memory. And then I have a very vivid memory of the trip home. And the one Air Force guy says, so do I turn here to get your parents home? I said, yeah, that's right. And he said, don't ever say that. Say that's correct. Because when somebody's asking you a question about directions, if you say that's right, that's confusing. Say that's correct. Now, why do I have those 2 very vivid memories? And I have no memory of visiting the base. I don't remember meeting any other high school kids. I don't remember a tour. I don't remember being fed lunch. I don't remember most of 1974, but it's not because I was doing drugs. It was just, who does remember their sophomore year of high school in detail? So I told this story to a friend of mine in scouting who had worked in Army intelligence, and he said, well, you were probably chemically debriefed. And I said, oh, no, I'm not a conspiratorialist. That's crazy. He says, no, they didn't have a sense of humor about UFOs. I haven't told the main part of the story. I'm getting ahead of myself. But he said in 74, they didn't have a sense of humor about UFOs, and one of the side effects of being chemically debriefed is you have a very vivid memory before the drug took effect and then after it wears off.
Oh, interesting.
And so what had happened was, I got the invitation to go. I mentioned that to another friend of mine in scouting who was, 10 years older than me maybe. His name's Pete. And he was a radio station engineer, so I was fascinated by learning from him everything about how transmitters work and the studio equipment, all that. But he was also a scoutmaster, advisor type, and a private pilot. And he had said, if you're going up to Wright-Patterson, ask to see the flying saucer that's in Hangar 18. So I did. I asked that question.
I would have too.
Can I see the flying saucer in Hangar 18? And anyhow, years later, I bought an RV and took my family down to Roswell. I'm going through the Roswell Museum, and I realized I was asking about the flying saucer in Hangar 18 in 1974. This is like a year, or maybe it was even 2, before Jesse Marcel got interviewed by Stan Friedman. Like, nobody was talking about Roswell in the 70s. It didn't really hit until 79 or 80, I think, is when the Berlitz book came out. So I called my friend Pete up after we toured the Roswell Museum, and I said, what are you trying to do, get me killed? Why are you telling me to ask about a flying saucer in 1974? How did you ever hear about it? And he said, well, he had a friend who was a certified flight instructor, a CFI. And that guy was really into UFOs in the 1960s. And so sometime around 1968, my friend Pete and that guy drove up to Dayton, Ohio, and just drove around and tried to find Hangar 18. Got on the base, got to the museum, asked around about it. And he told me that for about 6 months after that, every time he would go out to dinner or meet up with this guy anywhere, there would be the stereotypical men in black, these guys in dark suits with sunglasses and a dark sedan, and they'd either be sitting in the car watching them or sitting over at the other table across the way while they were eating. I'm like, really? I believe Pete. He's somebody I've trusted in scouting and known for over 40 years now. And so I said, well, can I meet this other guy? Can I meet the CFI guy? And he said, no, he died in a really mysterious plane crash. He said he was my best friend, and his wife knew, that, and I knew his mom. I knew a lot of his family, but he died in a plane crash, and they buried him, and I didn't find out about it until after he was buried. I never got invited to the funeral. So he thought it was all kind of mysterious. But I don't know. That's the most I have on that. I have knowledge.
That's good.
What's there. People like Yvonne Smith and Linda Moulton Howe say I ought to go get hypnotically regressed to see if they could pull any memories out of my experience at Wright Pat. But now I've been exposed, to dozens, maybe even 100 or more books on UFOs and infinite number of hours of conferences and podcasts and Art Bell shows, and I'm not sure I would trust whatever would come out of my mind as if it was a recovered memory.
Right. And I think it's hard to find people that are actually really, truly qualified to do that.
Right. One of them, Linda suggested, was Leo Sprinkle over in Wyoming, which isn't too far from here, but I never followed up on it.
If you go over, because Leo is getting up there, and yeah. I would love to take the trek and go over there and spend some time with him.
Yeah, if you want to set something like that up, I would go, and I would trust him. I don't know that there's a lot of others that I would, and I think a lot of stuff that's recovered memories. I've read some of the literature about that when it comes to criminal charges against people and whatnot, and it's not clear that those memories are always accurate. Certainly some of them are, I have no doubt. But I just don't know. I don't know that I would trust whatever it was that got recovered. But or maybe they put a hypnotic suggestion in to keep me from wanting to do that. I don't know that either.
Well, sometimes maybe you block things from your mind because you shouldn't be remembering it because it might be too much. I don't know. I just think that the more I learn about perhaps this field and some of the people that are in it who are claiming to be hypnotherapists that probably shouldn't necessarily be doing it, or that are leading the person that is getting regressed. It's just there's so much to think about, and then the personal repercussions of doing that. So you're probably making a good choice for right now, just to maybe let things come back when they will.
And I am interested in the science of this field. I'm fascinated by it. I think when you have a moonwalking astronaut with a PhD from MIT who grew up in Roswell, who probably was the last living witness to the Trinity test site explosion. Edgar Mitchell was out with his dad outside of Roswell on July 16th, 1945 at 5:45 in the morning or 5:23 in the morning, whenever it was, pre-dawn, and saw the western sky light up like dawn and then fade out, and then was told it was a weapons malfunction in a depot out there at White Sands, and knew that was a lie at the age of 14. So he goes to the moon, he goes to MIT, gets a PhD, he goes to the moon, he comes back, eventually he gets his ticker tape parade in his hometown of Roswell. I think they did a lot of the bigger cities first. And then to hear Ed tell the tale, a lot of the people that knew his dad said, they swore I'd never talk about this. They said they'd kill me if I did, but you grew up here, I knew your dad, and what happened in 47 wasn't no weather balloon. So I got Ed interested in looking around, and he says he's been privileged enough to have been briefed on the fact that we've attempted to reverse engineer non-human created alien technology. Well, that to me is really credible. That's a heck of an eyewitness reporting what he experienced and was told by others in high stations in the federal government. And then at the other end, you have people claiming to have contact experiences and ridiculously expensive 4 or 5 day retreats out in the deserts of Colorado or California. And I guess I'll avoid mentioning names in part.
Probably don't think you need to.
Yeah. And I did that for 5 days and was told that I was on a partially materialized bridge of a ship, and if I couldn't see it, it's because I wasn't meditating hard enough and as enlightened as those who could see all that. And I'm sorry, I don't consider myself a debunker or someone out to discredit the field, but that's the emperor's new clothes. I mean, there's nothing there. For those listeners who know who we're talking about, it's in a mixed bag, because that's an individual who did a lot of good, I think, earlier, and then went off into areas that aren't as credible. And then I know people that were closely associated that are very angry now about money that was given for various attempts to reverse engineer the propulsion systems and all that kind of crazy. And I just want nothing to do with that. Or well, I could go on, but there's no reason to do that. But at one end, you certainly have Dr. Mitchell, I think is among the most credible in terms of what he's had to say. And then you have, others like my friend John Alexander, whose manuscript I just reviewed for Reality Denied, Things That Can't Happen But Did, which is going to be published in a couple of months. Boy, I'd recommend everybody read that book. I was really privileged to read an early copy of it, and found a few typos, which John's grateful for. And yet people discredit John. Here you have a colonel in the United States Air Force. A guy got his PhD in death studies with Kubler-Ross. My goodness, who's written on future war, and on his book UFOs, Misrealities, and Conspiracies comes out and says in sentence 1, UFOs are real. There's non-human created technology flying in our skies. But then he debunks Roswell as if it was a weather balloon, which I guess he just upsets everybody. So I find
I really like him a lot, and I enjoy watching. Who was the really great video he did? He debated. Was it Stanton Friedman? They're great, and I just remember seeing that, and I love. He just is no nonsense. This is the way it is. Yep. And when I was speaking at UFO Congress this year, I was just drawn to him, and we kept talking about different things. And then you get people that say, "Oh, he's, disinfo and da-da-da and what blah blah blah."
Yeah, I would say John's a little overly skeptical on some things that I find credible, like Ed Mitchell and maybe some of what Phil Corso had to say. On the other hand, John has traveled the world, and you're going to read about it in his new book, Reality Denied, interspecies communication. He's visited shamans on every continent that has them. He's been to the reindeer herders in outer Mongolia. I've been to parts of Mongolia that he's been to, or been near to where he's been, and what he writes about that is absolutely consistent with my experience there. I've not met the shamans he's met. By the way, if you're interested in that, there's a wonderful movie I saw at Sundance called Horse Boy, about an American couple who take their autistic son to the far northern regions of Mongolia to meet with shamans, and he comes back not with a cure, but with the worst of his symptoms resolved. He learned to use a toilet. Of course, they didn't have one out there for forever, and he became less violent. And they have a website and all that. John met the same shaman that's in that movie called Horse Boy.
Oh, I'm going to watch it tonight.
Oh, you got to watch it. It's a wonderful documentary. I met the parents. That's what's wonderful. I've been a volunteer for Sundance for 12 years now. What's wonderful about Sundance is the filmmakers are there and you can ask them questions. And we talked for quite a while. There's another wonderful one, by the way, that you should watch called Eagle Huntress, with an S, a female version of Hunter. Eagle Huntress, about a girl in Mongolia, but she's with a Kazakh family. They speak Kazakh, not Mongolian. But her dad teaches her to hunt with an eagle. And it's just a part of the world that's so amazing. Anyway, he talks about interspecies communication and psychic experiences with Bob Bigelow at the Skinwalker Ranch. This is a book that everybody in this field wants to read, because the last part of his previous book, UFOs, Myths, Realities, and Conspiracies, in the last paragraph, he says, the ET hypothesis isn't sufficient to cover all the data of phenomenology. There's more going on here. There's presentient, non-human consciousness out there. That's what he experienced at Skinwalker. Or there's time travel or interdimensional travel. It's not all a hard-sided craft,
Exactly.
And looking at a broader field. And so he's another person I give a lot of credibility to.
I do as well, and I just think that there's so much more. And I always say that sometimes I think that we are rushing towards this extraterrestrial, and we're really looking. That's moving us away from what really is going on. So, could there be extraterrestrial civilizations here? Of course, but this is so multi-layered, and we need to look at the paranormal, and we need to look at all of these things that are taking place, and quit kind of sectioning things off, because we can't do that if we're going to figure out what we're dealing with.
And people say, well, we shouldn't have all this infighting. We ought to all just get along. I think I'm the opposite of that. In any field of scholarship, there's peer review, and researchers hold each other to account. And where there's misrepresentation or fraud or dishonesty or misstatements, honest misstatements happen, then a field of scholars call each other on that. And a scholar will be grateful for the correction, right? So I'm not saying that we should engage in mudslinging or character assassination or whatever, but I have experienced firsthand the blowback of my attempts just to call people to account for things that I've documented, weren't supported by the facts or were inconsistent with prior statements or the like. And that largely comes out of having typed every word of the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. So I created a transcript of all 5 days, 40 hours, including the night sessions that went 3 hours a night on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Monday night, we had about an hour with Dr. Greer and then his film Sirius, and I didn't obviously transcribe Sirius. But I went through and checked the spelling of every military base in South America, every general, every location, whatever, and documented some problems with some of the witnesses, and sent them out their testimonies and said, if you want to revise and extend your remarks, just like the congressional record would do for a real hearing, do that. And, Nick Pope was great. I think Nick Pope is another solid researcher. And, I didn't find anything particularly egregious, but he went through and said, well, here's some things I wish I had said a little better, or add this to a footnote, or here's what I meant to say. Others didn't respond at all. And then, Dr. Greer indicated he'd get back to me about this Admiral Marin, who won the Ampere Prize and has an MD and a PhD and was an advisor to President Sarkozy. There simply is no such person. I don't know if this was a misstatement, an innocent misstatement, but I do know he won't correct it and get back to me. And others have come to his defense and say, well, I'm accusing him of things that I'm not. But there simply is no individual named Moran with any spelling who won the Ampere Prize in France, period. And then you added that with an MD, with a PhD, who is an advisor to President Sarkozy, and then Dr. Greer goes on to say, who we've been meeting with. So it seems like this is a human being that he knows. And when I wrote him initially, he said he'd check his files. And he's apparently still checking. 4 years later, he doesn't respond to my request for clarification anymore. And I think in a field of scholars, you say, hey, you don't do that. What were you talking about? Especially when it's under oath, and I was the guy giving the oath, right? I promised to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to the members of this committee today. Raise your hand. Sit down. Okay, we'll start. So you did that under oath. I don't take that lightly.
Well, and I think you bring up a really great point. I mean, in a field of scientific research, or if we're trying to be scholarly about this, I mean, there's nothing particularly scholarly about what we're seeing in the field of ufology. And that's unfortunate, because we need to have, Ted Rowe from NARCAP has started the International Association of UAP Research, where he is putting together a peer-reviewed journal so we can kind of move this in a different direction. And we always talk about creating standards, ethical standards, business practices, all of these things. And it shocks me that we can be, all of us are adults, but yet, and we behave like bullies. We're completely irrational. And all of these people that are behaving this way have day jobs. And I would wonder if they behave that way during the day. I would doubt it. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and especially for people who believe that life on Earth is not the sum of our whole consciousness in the universe, that this is a testing ground, or that there's more to come later. Why compromise your future in that way?
Absolutely. We're going to take a break, and we'll finish that when we come back. I'm Erica Lukes here with Dr. Joe Buchman. We will be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows, visit her website at ufoclassified.com. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, my friends. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified, and it is Ladies' Night. So stick around for a wonderful night of broadcasting here. And I want to thank all of you for listening, for getting into chat, for spreading the word about UFO Classified. Make sure you start paying attention to my Facebook posts on Monday and on my tweets and my website, because I will be on the adventure of a lifetime. I'm going to Hesdalen, Norway, and I will be working with Erling Strand to really uncover things and to interview him, to interview his scientific team, and also the students at Oxford University who go there twice a year for science camp. This will be incredible, so make sure you follow me. Tonight, my guest is a Utah person, and we were fortunate enough to be on the same panel to talk about disclosure at the Utah UFO Festival. Dr. Joe Buchman has been on all of the major radio shows. He has had a very important role in disclosure, and he is also the chair of the Libertarian Party Platform Committee, and will be running again for Utah special election for District 3 as a Libertarian candidate. So thank you for being here. And I know you're kind of jockeying a few different things where you're at, but I have a question that I want to ask you from the chat room from Libertas, who wants to know, we mentioned in the last segment that you were talking about transcribing the Disclosure Project. He wants to know why you did that instead of Nick Pope.
Well, I don't quite understand the question. This was the citizens' hearing on disclosure that I transcribed. Maybe that's the misunderstanding.
Okay.
That was April 29th and 30th and May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 2013. And that's where we had 6 former members of Congress, Mike Gravel, a former senator, and then former representatives Roscoe Bartlett, Merrill Cook, Darlene Hooley, Lynn Woolsey, and Carolyn Kilpatrick as the 6 members of the committee. Steve Bassett organized it. We had 43 witnesses from 10 different nations. It was translated simultaneously into Mandarin and Spanish. They're currently working on other translations, I believe. And it was a partnership between Steve and Ruben Langdon and Jeremy Corbell. And then I was the 7th member of that committee. So I played the role of moderator, swear everybody in, gave all the announcements, whatnot. Danny Sheehan also served on the committee as of counsel. There were 8 members of the committee. 7 of us got to ask questions of witnesses. So when Darlene Hooley left at noon on Friday, I replaced her, and she's a hero, wonderful human being. Her sister died just before those hearings, and she went ahead and came anyway. And then she left on that Friday to get back to her sister's memorial service.
Wow.
And she'd been terribly ill for a long time. In some ways, it wasn't a shock. It was almost a relief. But so there's 7 of us that asked questions, and a role that I loved playing. And so when I got access to the audio, I just started typing up a transcript and footnoting everything for kind of a scholarly publication that I intended to put out there. And I've been asked not to do that by Jeremy and Ruben, because they still hope, at least they did as of a year ago, to monetize those hearings, to sell it to the History Channel or somewhere and make a ton of money and pay Tom Clearwater back. Tom is the Canadian who gave the money to stage it all as a loan, not as a gift. And so I've respected their wishes on that. I wish that the hearings have been put up for free. I wish that what I've worked on was just on a Wikipedia-like article available for free on the internet, and other people who watch the hearings or listen to it that find any errors I've made could correct them. That was my intention. But all that came to a grinding halt shortly after the hearings were over. And so I mentioned Nick Pope earlier because I typed it all up, and then I invited each witness to read over their remarks and make any corrections or additions that they wanted to make, and some did and some didn't. By the way, I don't mean to focus only on Dr. Greer, but there are other things that he said there that are unverifiable that then come into question because of the things that are proven to be misstatements that then aren't corrected. But there were others as well. Colonel French gave some testimony that's proved to be confabulated. Kevin Randall did a good job of dissecting Colonel French's testimony. Paul Hellyer quoted from some material that's questionable as well, and people like Chris O'Brien and others have kind of torn into that, which is not to denigrate the hearings at all. I mean, by and large, those 40 hours are the most powerful collection of expert quality witness testimony given under oath in the crucible of 6 former members of Congress evaluating it and challenging the witnesses and questioning them on what they were presenting. And I think it's also fair to say that over the course of those 5 days, people like Roscoe Bartlett, who has a PhD, had, I think, 16 patents with NASA, had served a career designing electronics and other materials. He invented the breathing apparatus that let the astronauts breathe on the moon that firefighters now use to survive fighting fires. Retired at the age of 65 and then served in the House for 20 years, from I think 66 or 67 to 87 years old. Over the course of those 5 days, people like Dr. Bartlett and Merrill Cook and Darlene Hooley and Lynn Woolsey and Mike Gravel and Colin Kirkpatrick came to take this issue seriously. I think at first they were kind of, embarrassed a little bit or tentative, and by day 5 they were advocates for taking this to the United Nations, for bringing more public attention to it. Mike Gravel said there's no reason to go have the United States Congress do anything. They're not worth a bucket of spit. There's some wonderful moments like that. He challenged, by the way, Nick Pope to state the obvious, which was the Bentwaters base housed American nuclear weapons. And Nick said that he had gone to the Ministry of Defense and had been informed that he was to say, I can neither confirm nor deny. And Mike Gravel says, what are you talking about, Nick? Come on, everybody knows this. You're here, you're safe, you're not in Great Britain anymore, you're an American now. Why don't you just say what we all know? And he said, well, I could refer you to Lord Hill Norton, who testified that such was the case. And he said, so we spend 5 minutes going around this circus to just get to the obvious. The aliens were here because they're interested in what we're doing with our nukes. And, you had John Burroughs and Jim Peniston there testifying to the UFOs and nukes events of the Minuteman missiles here in America. It was riveting testimony. So by and large, I would encourage everybody to look at the citizens hearing videos, or someday hopefully read the transcript. As I'm talking to you now, I should probably give Ruben another call. It's probably been a full year since I last asked if it would be okay yet. But,
so tell me again who Ruben is. Tell us again.
Ruben Langdon owned Just Cause Productions, and he had a sighting which changed his life. And Steve Bassett decided to get out of D.C. sometime around 2011, I think. Around 2011, go to Hollywood and see if we couldn't find some money in Hollywood to produce. His idea was to produce a documentary along the lines of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. So let's just find somebody in Hollywood, a Dan Aykroyd or someone with money and interest in this field, who might be able to crack it open with a really well done documentary, and you could do it cheap like Inconvenient Truth, and that's what he was looking to do. And he ran into Ruben at the Flying Saucer Cafe, where Steve was holding these meetings. And so Ruben said, well, come on down, and he put him up in one of their the houses that he had for the guys that they were bringing over from Japan to do video game stuff. So they had a space there with the 96 video cameras with the infrared sensors, and then you put a person in a costume with sensors, and the cameras and the computers track all that, and you can turn a human being into a video game avatar. Ruben had experience with that because he was the main stuntman on all the stunts in Jim Cameron's movie Avatar. So he was the Na'vi, and he was Jake Scully, and he was the stuntman for a lot of that. And so Ruben and Steve really hit it off and had a great relationship. And the company was struggling, and Tom Clearwater came in and said, I'd like to fund something significant in disclosure. And Steve said, well, instead of just doing this documentary, let's do the citizens hearing, which was a proposal he had put out probably 10 years earlier, along with Alfred Weber at the time, early on in Alfred Weber's interest in this field. They had the idea that you could get retired members of Congress and stage a faux hearing. And Tom Clearwater, and so Steve presented him with, I guess, a menu of things that the money could be used for, and Steve and Clearwater said, I like the idea of doing these hearings in D.C., and so that's what we funded. And then not only do the hearings and stream them live, but then also record it all in high def and use that as part of the material for the documentary. That was the plan. And boy, it was heady times. So I first learned about it in November of 2012. And like I said, I've been volunteering for the Sundance Film Festival for years, so I encouraged them to come to Sundance. And here at the Sundance Film Festival in February of 2013, we had a press conference with Jeremy Corbell was introduced as the director. Reuben Langdon was introduced as the owner of the production company. And then Steve Bassett was there as kind of the visionary. And then Ed Mitchell appeared by Skype. And it was a full house. People were very interested in this new film that was going to be coming out called Truth Embargo. And it was going to follow the historian Richard Dolan, the journalist Linda Moulton Howe, and the activist Steve Bassett. And then the citizens' hearing would just be a part of that documentary was the vision. And so they had rented a house for a month, and everybody left after Sundance except for Steve. And I was talking to Steve, and I said, so who are the Congress people? And he says, well, I haven't invited them yet. I said, you haven't invited them yet? Steve, it's almost March. You're doing this in April. That's next month, It's about 60 days away. And he said, well, we got to get the website up. We got to get all the witnesses. They got to be credible witnesses. I said, retired members of Congress have lives. So I made him print out the invitations, 50 of them. I drove him to the post office. I stamped the envelopes, and we got them in the mail. And only one person responded by the end of March. We were a month away from, he had rented the National Press Club. We're going to go to D.C. The whole thing's on track. And Steve Bassett called me and said, I'm going to have to cancel the whole thing. We got to refund Tom Clearwater's money. I've only got one congresswoman, and she's ready to bail because she doesn't want her name announced until we have at least 2 other people. And what am I going to do? And I said, well, give me 24 hours. Give me 48 hours, Steve. Give me just 48 hours. Don't do anything. And he said, okay. So I got on the phone, and I called Mike Gravel. Now, Mike Gravel, for those listeners who don't know, was the senator who read the Pentagon Papers into the congressional record to protect the New York Times from the Nixon administration back in, I think, 1972. Gravel was the chairman of the Buildings and Grounds Committee for the Senate, but he took the Pentagon Papers and read them into a meeting of the Building and Grounds Committee, thus insulating the New York Times from any lawsuits coming from the Attorney General under Nixon. And so he's a real hero of mine. He's a whistleblower, and I knew him because he ran. This is how all this stuff comes back together. You're going to love this. He ran to try to get the Libertarian presidential nomination in 2008. So I called up. First I called Merrill Cook because he was from Utah, and Merrill said he would do it. And Merrill's son had won an award from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and Merrill had been on the Space and Science and Technology committees, and Merrill was perfect. And then I called Gravel, and he said, well, I'd love to do it, but I'm going on a cruise down the Danube. I said, well, call Steve. And Steve called me and said, yeah, Gravel can't do it because he's going on a cruise down the Danube, but good try. And I just about blew a cork. So I called Gravel back, and I said, do you realize they're going to pay you $20,000 for this? And he said, no, Steve never mentioned it. I said, call him back and tell him you'll do it for the $20,000 plus the cost of changing your vacation. He said, yeah, that's a great idea. So that's how I got Gravel, and that just shows you how, I love Steve Bassett, but boy, he had that one in the palm of his hand. Well, once we got Gravel and Cook and Kilpatrick, then other people wanted to do it, but it was a chicken and egg problem at first. No member of Congress wanted to be on a UFO hearing, be first to do that. They all asked who else is going to be there. And so in the end, we wound up turning people away. And there were some really good people that probably if I was a harder person or if I'd been in charge or whoever was, we probably would have let a couple of people on the committee go to bring in some bigger power players. But once we got to 5, we were done, we thought. But then Roscoe Bartlett showed up, and I said, Steve, we got to get Roscoe. And he said, no, we can't go to 6. We can't afford it. I said, well, check out Roscoe and get rid of one of the others, So we added Roscoe on as number 6, and then there were even more after that. But the reason for Roscoe was his PAC, his Political Action Committee. Steve looked it up. I didn't know this. Steve called me and said, do you know the name of Bartlett's Political Action Committee? I said, no, what is it? He says it's the Every Truth Be Told Political Action Committee. So you can't say no to that guy. And he had patents with NASA. He's 87 years old. He doesn't care anymore what people think about anything. So they credited me with saving the citizens hearing. And it probably would have gotten canceled if we hadn't found a way to get members of Congress, and I was the one who pulled them out of the hat at the last second. So,
well, bless you. I mean, because that is really, really powerful. And I always watch Mike Gravel talking, or Merrill, and just watching the look on their faces and watching the sentiment change, as they're hearing this testimony. I mean, that is so profound and powerful. And I think for all of us in this field, we will remember those pivotal moments.
Absolutely. And I will be forever grateful to Steve Bassett for having the vision to drive that. I can be critical of Steve. We're good friends. He's critical of me. We make each other better people, I think. And you'll hear in my closing remarks, if you watch it, where I said, as a libertarian, I mostly have a seething contempt for members of Congress. But these 6 people who I've gotten to know over the last week are all heroes. They all were. Merrill Cook came with his wife. His main concern was that we have somebody sit with her because she was in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's.
I know. And she passed away, and
she did.
It's very sad. Camille was a lovely woman.
She was an opera singer. I get chills talking about her. It was a love affair, he and Camille, so beautiful. But he just wanted to be able to see her in the audience while he was on stage. That was his one request. Darlene came even though her sister had died. Roscoe drove an hour. He's 87, but he went home every day to Virginia. And Mike Gravel was suffering with some health problems that kept him away for a couple hours on one of the days. It was a real physical challenge for him to be able to be there. Carolyn Kilpatrick's a hero because she was just the one who went first. And Lynn Woolsey, I just fell in love with Lynn Woolsey. She's a uber-liberal Democrat from California. We had some wonderful political discussions, and she treated me with respect, and I felt heard, and I got her point of view, and it was just delightful being with all 6 of those people.
Wow.
And to be able to fill in for Darlene Hooley and serve as a member of the committee for half a day on Friday, was a real honor. And,
that's so amazing that you were there. And speaking of disclosure, and I know that we have a lot of really curious things taking place with it, in the realm of disclosure. And I want to touch on that because right now, of course, we're seeing Tom DeLonge, who is coming out, and every week we've got this big announcement, and then it's pulled back, and then what will happen? I mean, we know he has high-level contacts, but are they playing him? I mean, what's going on? And I want to get your sentiment about your feelings about that, because in my opinion, and I don't know if you feel this way too, there's something pretty important taking place right now. And I don't know what that is, and I don't know why there are different factions working to kind of sway us in directions. I need to know your take on that, and I want to say, anybody in chat room, if you want to call in and ask questions, please do that. But before we go to break, what are your thoughts? What's going on?
It's the great mystery, isn't it? Who are we, and why are we here?
And why are we being played? I mean, by...
Yeah. And I would hope that whatever's happening, a greater intelligence than mine is executing it for our best interests. I don't feel like those that are in control are at the higher levels are human. I think there are humans who know more about this than you or I know, and I bet a lot of them are in government. Maybe they have good reasons for not sharing everything they know. I would bet, I'm certain, that if they were to share everything they would know, we would all have 1,000 times more questions than we have now. I'm sure they don't know everything. But boy, I'd like to know. And another one was Gordon Cooper, Gordo, had that film from Edwards Air Force Base, The Last Human Being to Orbit the Earth Alone in Faith 7. Read his book, A Leap of Faith. There's another American hero that talks about seeing something during World War II, the Foo Fighters, and then seeing a lenticular-shaped craft with landing gear on Edwards Air Force Base. So there is, and I believe John Alexander, UFOs are real. They're non-human created technologies in our skies. There's multiple military pilot witnesses with coincident radar return, and we should give credence to that. And we don't. It's got a huge ridicule factor. And believe me, I know. Go ahead and run for the United States Congress and be the UFO guy. And imagine what fun people can make of that. And I just don't care. I'm like Bob Bigelow in that interview with 60 Minutes. I don't give a damn. I know what I know. I've met the people I've met. I find them credible. And if you want to dismiss that out of hand, you're just not bringing your intellect to it. Anybody who takes a serious look at the evidence here comes away not just dismissing it, even though there is a three-ring circus around it of some intentional fraud, some perhaps misperceptions, some people in need of psychiatric care, trying to find their way to the field, whatever. When we come back, though, I want to talk about the connection between libertarian political philosophy and aliens, and the evolution of mankind, where we're headed. I know you've got a break in like a minute. But,
yes, we do. And I would love to get your feedback on Tom DeLonge as well.
Okay.
We're going to do that because this is where we're at, and there are some really interesting things taking place right now. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight, Dr. Buchman. Joe, I'm going to call you Joe. What can I say? But it is so kind of you because I know you're kind of running a bunch of different things right now, and you are kind to be here. This is very, very cool to have somebody from Utah who is so accomplished on the show. I am Erica Lukes, and I want to thank all of you for getting into chat, for sharing information about the show. Please make sure you are paying attention to my little outing in the next couple weeks because Hessjalen is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I want to share that with you. In the meantime, make sure you tune in for a lovely night on KCOR. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
How do you like your radio? A little strange, a little scary, maybe a little maze-mo, just for good measure. Well, then tune into After Hours AM right here on KCOR Digital Radio Network. Every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we take you on a journey between the strange, unusual, and sometimes downright scary. Again, that's After Hours AM, broadcasting right here on KCOR Digital Radio Network, 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern, every Monday night.
Looking for a radio show like no other?
We need something brand new.
Then tune into the KCOR Digital Radio Network, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and get ready for The Quantum Shift. A great shift of consciousness is sweeping across the Earth. Are you ready for the dimensional shift?
It is amazing, is it not?
The Quantum Shift, hosted by Dr. Sam Muggsy and Kent Dunn. Be part of the fifth dimensional reality, where consciousness prevails and the universal law of one is the only true reality. The Quantum Shift. Live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Just honestly trying to give him the benefit of not going mental.
No, he's just a normal person who was wearing the wrong footwear at the wrong time, lost his temper, and
got mental.
Okay.
All right. Just checking.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Each week, join Patrick Phillips as he takes you inside Hollywood. In-depth celebrity interviews, the very latest entertainment news, and more. Patrick Phillips hosts Pop Culture Tonight.
Join me Thursdays at 1 p.m. right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific, for Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to our final segment, and I'm very sad to tell you that the next 2 weeks I will be airing a pre-recorded show, but make sure you get in here, make sure you guys are still chatting, because I will be in Norway. I know you feel very sorry for me, but I will be giving you updates on Twitter, on Facebook, on UFOclassified.com. So make sure you go there, and if you like the show, spend a moment or just donate $5, whatever you can, because I really want to keep this show going, and it is a labor of love, let me tell you that. So just throwing that out there. But I want to take a moment to thank all of you. You mean the world to me, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm here because of you, because I know that we need to work together to try to get good information out there and to try to change the field and to change the world, honestly. My guest this evening is very spirited and very driven, and is somebody that I really look up to. He's from he lives in Utah. I'm going to go visit him. I'm excited about that. But Dr. Buchman holds a PhD from Indiana University, an MBA from Purdue. He is also running for District 3 as the Libertarian candidate. And so we'll talk to him a little bit about that. And I just want to say, before we left for break, we were talking about disclosure and some of the curious things that are taking place right now with disclosure, because we heard at the 2016 UFO Congress, Tom DeLonge talking about this life-altering announcement that was going to be taking place. And we're still waiting.
It was 2017.
Oh, it's 2017. Why do I keep doing that? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm in a time warp.
It's okay. 8 months ago.
Oh, Lord. Why does time seem like it's going so slow? I'm telling you.
I don't.
I know.
Do you know any? I'm going to go off on a tangent. Do you know any Norwegian?
No, but I better learn it really quickly.
Yeah. So there was this girl once from Norway, and the only thing I remember is Jeg elsker deg, which means I love you. And that always got me a lot of interesting smiles getting on the Norway ride at Epcot.
Okay, Jeg elsker deg. Okay, I will remember that.
But the easy one, the one that'll get you more mileage, is just two words. It's simple. Tusen takk. Tusen takk. So that means 1,000 thank yous, or thank you very much. Tusen takk. Tusen takk.
I like it.
And that's all I remember. But I frantically tried to learn a little Norwegian to woo a girl once. Her name was Danae. Memories. But that's for another time. So Tom DeLonge, I don't know. It's a mystery wrapped in a conundrum, whatever Winston Churchill said about Russia. I'm just waiting to hear what's next.
Lord! But I mean, what you have been in this game a long time, and obviously you've seen different people come forward that are going to be breaking the dam and releasing the mother lode. I mean, what do you make of that? Because to me and to other people in the field, we know that Tom DeLonge has these connections, but why? Where is this going? And is he being played?
I don't know, and I guess I could even go on to say I don't care. I got so much other stuff going on that where I'm trying to make a difference, that sitting around and just trying to analyze the heck out of something that's impossible just is a waste of all our time. So I would encourage the listeners to get on with it and just wait and see what happens. We're not going to probably, unless you know Tom DeLonge, affect whatever series of events is going to roll out there. I'll certainly be watching, and I'm interested. And then I kind of grew disinterested, frankly. Steve Bassett gets accused of the same thing, too. You know, Obama, he was sure was going to be the disclosure president. He was sure the citizens hearing was going to create a media firestorm. He was sure before that, you know, whatever. I first met him in Roswell 20 years ago, and he was telling people to buy property, and, you know, Roswell was going to take off once disclosure happens and become this worldwide tourist mecca. It all seems premature. It's been happening since, you know, the contactees and the Space Brothers from the 50s. It's just around the corner. We're going to have open contact, and I hope I live long enough to see it, but I'm not really counting on it. I do want to talk about the connection, though, between why I run for office as a libertarian. And by the way, a poll just came out that shows me number 4 in this race. The Republicans polling at 50%. After all, this is Utah. The Democrats polling at 20, which is probably her ceiling, because that's about the total number of Democrats in the 3rd district. The state of Utah has gerrymandered those districts, by the way, to keep the Democrats in a minority in every one, which I don't think is particularly playing fair. Then there's the son of former United States Senator Bob Bennett, Jim Bennett, who's running, and they've created a new party called the United Utah Party. He's only polling at about 5, maybe 5.5%. I'm at just shy of 3. So to be polling, you know, within shooting distance of a guy who's got a huge name recognition with his dad having been a senator, the Bennett name is well known here. His grandfather was a senator, too. And Jim's very articulate. He's a policy wonk. He knows the history of Utah legislation because he grew up with it from the time he was a kid with his dad. I can't begin to equal that level of knowledge. And I like Jim. We've been treating each other very professionally. I think we're both interested in ending the two-party duopoly that is dysfunctional, stuck in their history, has given us $20 trillion in debt, $200 trillion in mandated unfunded federal spending. This is not in our national security interests. It's not in our national health care interests. That kind of debt is a tremendous burden on our children and grandchildren. I look at my dad and the prior generation as the greatest generation, the World War II generation. They gave me the gift of a pretty nice life by the 1960s. We're going to pass on a ridiculous amount of debt. I think our children will curse us for what we've done through our economic ignorance. And so I run as a libertarian in part. Well, let me put it this way. Back in 2008, when I last ran for Congress, so about 10 years ago, Steve was doing the X conferences in Washington, D.C. He was going to put a UFO conference in the heart of D.C., get the staff there. And boy, those conferences were incredible. That's where I met Ed Mitchell and John Alexander and C.B. Scott Jones and Paul Hellyer, the Minister of Defense from Canada, and of course Linda Moulton Howe and Nick Pope, and all of them were there. Amazing conferences. And so I was on an activist panel as a guy running for Congress calling for disclosure. Steve told me I was the 3rd candidate to ever do that for federal office. The first
that is amazing. And I have to just say, and I'm sorry to interrupt you because we're going to talk about this, but we've got a caller on the phone, and he's been trying to get a hold of us, and I just want to take his call because he's a great listener for the show. He has a question for you. So, and then we'll continue the conversation. But Libertas, hello.
Erica, how are you this
I am
evening?
Good. How are you?
If I were any better, I'd be co-hosting this show.
You are so fabulous.
Yeah.
You know, I love you.
Hey, I have to bust your chops first for someone that advocates for disclosure, titling their show UFO Classified, though.
Well, you know what? I'm not advocating for disclosure because to me personally, I'm not thinking it's going to happen.
We've had disclosure. I don't need politicians to tell me.
Absolutely.
Joe, how are you? Joe, I wanted to ask you if you're familiar with Dr. John Brandenburg. He's a plasma physicist.
I am not.
All right. Well, maybe you just want to jot down this URL for a little research sometime. His website is lifeonmars.pub.
Life on Mars.
.pub. .pub.
P-U-B. Pub. Okay, I just wrote it down.
Now, he claims, and again, he's a plasma physicist, that there is a certain type of isotope that's prevalent on Mars that's associated with a past nuclear explosion.
I have read that. Yeah, it looks like there was a nuclear war on Mars, and it's not the kind of nuclear radiation that's left over from anything that we discover in nature. It's only identical or very similar to what we have from a plutonium bomb, and they're finding that on Mars. I have heard that.
Exactly, and he states that the face on Mars, I don't know if it's called the Cydonia, as well as the pyramid are real things. He works with a group of guys, and he allegedly obtained back-channel approval, now this is kind of interesting, from the DIA to disclose the information that they obtained. So that would be interesting for you to do some research on at some point.
That's the kind of research I find fascinating, because that's verifiable and it's peer reviewable. And if you discover isotopes on Mars that can't be produced by nature, that are indicative there was an ancient nuclear war there, that's more interesting to me than somebody saying they heard from somebody else that they saw this thing. Well,
exactly. And recently, and I'm going to butcher the name, but how about Congressman? Is it Rohrabacher? Is that how to pronounce it? He's a Republican.
Wasn't that the guy that asked the NASA guys if there was any possibility of life thousands of years ago on Mars?
The guy's never a straight answer.
Yep. Yeah, that was an interesting moment.
It was. But anyways, thanks for what you did for the Disclosure Project and coming on tonight.
Well,
it's been pretty interesting.
To be clear, it was for the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. The Disclosure Project was Stephen Greer's thing in May of 2001. And just when there was some traction going, it got kind of eclipsed by the events of 9/11, 2001.
Yeah, and first, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think what he did in that May was fantastic. He got several dozen or more high credible witnesses under oath. He took notarized depositions under oath from, I think, another 200 or 300 or 400 witnesses. And so that event was seen around the world. It was in the early days, I think, of streaming material on the internet and whatnot, and was huge. But that was the Disclosure Project. What I was involved with was the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure.
Yeah, I don't need politicians to disclose to me, really. I really think that ultimately they're protecting fossil fuels and big corporate money. I think that's what it's all about. I think people can handle disclosure. I mean, even out of the Vatican, they're making statements that they would baptize the ETs. So, I mean, they know about it. They have a number of places they're studying the stars from themselves. But anyway, thanks, Eric.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I've had the same conversation or similar conversation with Steve Bassett, where I've said, look, we're not advocating or lobbying for disclosure. We're advocating for redisclosure. Disclosure happened on the front page of the Roswell Record in July of '47. The Army Air Corps has recovered a flying disc. That was disclosure. So if we're not, we're arguing for redisclosure. People say, well, how can they keep it a secret? I think after disclosure, we're going to look back on it and say, none of this stuff was a secret. The only thing we don't know right now, prior to that event, is what is the truth from all the garbage that's been piled on top of it. I don't think they've kept any secrets, though. I bet virtually everything's out there and been discussed. It's just in a sea of disinformation.
And a lot of people don't realize that was the 509th Bomber Wing that was based out of Roswell at that time. They're the Air Force wing that dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So are we going to, do we think they're a bunch of bumbling fools that don't know the difference between a disc and a weather balloon? I mean, come on.
The Air Force said they were, which is absurd on the face of it. And that was the only nuclear-capable fighting force on the planet, was the 509 based in Roswell.
And they're going to misidentify a saucer. Anyways, thanks for your time. I won't take up any more of your show. Thank you, Erica.
It is so good to hear your voice. I just have to tell you, thank you for always being there and for calling in, and you always have really insightful things to say.
I support you, young lady. We'll see you.
Hey, you have a good night. Stay out of trouble. You know, it won't be in Hestall. And I'm just saying, but, you know, I mean, and this, I have to ask you because you were talking, both of you, and talking about disclosure. And, you know, sometimes I go to bed at night and I learn, you know, I'm thinking about what I've learned during the day from having a conversation with somebody that has been researching this and is not public. And the reality of the situation might be too much for us to handle, and it might be incredibly disturbing. And so,
yeah, I mean,
is disclosure the best thing?
Well, what Steve says is disclosure just having a world leader, maybe the Pope, but head of state, China, the United States, Russia, someone with high credibility, just simply say, some of the evidence that we're not alone in the universe is valid. We're not alone in the universe, period. So that's disclosure, and I get that would do a lot of good for humanity. We might stop fighting over arbitrary lines in the sand that define our nation states. We might start seeing ourselves as humans on Earth instead of citizens of some particular nation state. We might become a lot more humble. It would be the Copernican revolution times 10,000. But I think you're right. The full disclosure of what the nature of reality is probably would leave us all scared to death, like a Stephen King movie. I mean, it's going to be incomprehensible, and maybe not all bad or frightening, but just the awesomeness of it can be overwhelming. And I can imagine that. I also wonder, you know, what do the aliens wonder about? I doubt that E.T. in the souped-up Corvette that flew him or her here has all the answers to everything about the universe themselves. They're probably wondering, you know, who created it all and why does it exist and are there multiple dimensions and whatever. So I don't think there's going to be disclosure in the sense of we now have all the answers. But there could be disclosure in the sense of we're not alone in the universe. We ought to stop fighting with each other and unite as humanity on a peaceful planet Earth. And that's why I run as a libertarian. That's what I was about to get to earlier, where Steve had told me that I was the third candidate for federal office. It was Jimmy Carter. I talked about this in 1975 and 76 when he ran for president. Then Steve Bassett did, and then me. And what I said at the X conference was, I am 100% positive there are zero Republicans and Democrats anywhere in the cosmos, except for on this one backward planet. But if they're getting here, they're not burning petroleum to do it. They got some incredible power source, which would probably also make a pretty good bomb. So if they're getting here, they haven't blown themselves up. And that's the core of libertarian political philosophy. The politics is a branch of philosophy, along with ethics and morality. So the politics of libertarianism are derived from two fundamental paradigms. They're very simple. Just indulge me for a minute. The first one is the non-initiation of aggression. You don't have the right to initiate force or violence against another human being or alien to get what you want or what you think is best for others. You don't initiate violence. You get social change through education and persuasion. And secondly, you either own your physical body, the meat bucket that you're having your human experience in, or you're part slave. If somebody else owns part of you, you're not free. So libertarians are about freedom. You own your body. You should be able to do whatever you want with it, as long as you don't violate the first principle of initiating aggression, which means you eat, drink, watch, listen to, ingest, smoke, inject, and have physical, sexual relations with whoever you want. It's none of the government's business. You own you. Those shouldn't. If people have issues with that, those are issues of vice or sin, not crime. It shouldn't be a government concern. I think that's where the aliens are. So if ET's here, I believe the cosmos is teeming with libertarians. That you don't get to travel among the stars if you have a shred of initiation of violence as part of your philosophy. That's just not genetically reinforced behavior. Maybe it's not even allowed or permitted somehow by some greater enlightened wisdom that's out there that's at its core very peaceful. So libertarians are at their heart all about peace and loving each other and leaving each other alone and the real value of liberty. You don't, no matter how good the end might seem, have the right to go take things from others by force. Now, if someone initiates force, of course you have the right and really the moral responsibility to respond with an equivalent level of force to stop that. But you don't have the right to start it. And that's what I see of ET. So far, I've not been cooked in somebody's soup to be consumed on some planet out there. They've been leaving me alone. And at the same time, I think they look at humanity the way that we look at a caterpillar that's created a chrysalis and is about to emerge as a butterfly. As much as we'd like to help that caterpillar come out and experience being a butterfly, if you do that, if you cut the chrysalis open and you help the butterfly out, it will die, because it needs the struggle of fighting through the web for its wings to grow strong enough to fly. And I have a sense, or maybe it's just a hope or belief, that the extraterrestrials who are here are looking at humanity the same way. If we were to intervene right now and help openly, it would not be in their best interest. So we're going to let them struggle for a while.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment, and I want to say that every night, I struggle with this because I think whatever my experiences have been positive, but I understand though that this is so multi-layered. There are other things there that don't have our best interest at heart. That can, you look at an area like Skinwalker Ranch, and you look at the fact that. There are things that take place that affect people's psyches. They affect their health. I mean, and we need to study this, and I think we need to really. It's hard because we all have our belief systems coming into this, and I want to believe that this is benevolent and happy, and the same thing that Dr. Greer does. But I think it is important that we look at this, and perhaps Bassett and you and myself and a few other people can all sit down and say, okay, we understand that it's here. We don't need anybody to tell us it's here. How are we going to prepare humanity? How are we going to do good scientific studies? And how are we going to get people through this process? I know some people have been scared to death by things they say they have experienced. And I said this at the Laughlin conference a few years ago. My cat got out once and got full of brambles and just was a mess. And I gave that cat a bath, shower actually. And that cat was not happy. I don't know if anyone else is listening has tried to give a cat a shower, but it's not safe. But I didn't get clawed up too badly. But it was in the best interest of the cat. I wasn't trying to hurt the cat. I wasn't trying to kill the cat. The cat did not have a level of consciousness to understand what was happening at all, and it was out of love and concern for the cat's well-being. I don't think you should give a cat a shower every year even, but if they come back that messed up, it's probably a good idea. I think some of the experiencers maybe have had that. And then I can also say my personal experience, some of the most positive things that have ever happened to me have been some of the most terrifying. Like, get on Coast to Coast AM with 600 stations, or get in a debate with a Republican and a Democrat and be expected to know how to solve every problem on the face of the earth, or where Aleppo is, to throw in a bone to Gary Johnson from last year's campaign. Yeah, that was
You're
awesome.
supposed to know everything. Just throw yourself out there and let them throw everything they have at you. That's terrifying, and yet I've gained value out of it and grown from it. I'd like to think that's at least part of what's going on that some people maybe dismiss as negative. But there are some things that just seem inexplicably terrifying. And maybe there is, I know there's evil in this world because it's in the hearts of some humans that do evil things. And maybe there's more to it than that. But at least in terms of the guys that have access to incredible technology and power, they haven't done anything especially nasty with it, and it looks like they've tried to shut down some of our nukes when we've been on the edge of doing something stupid. And that suggests to me that they might have our best interests at heart. At least most of them.
I would love to think that, and I mean, like I said, the experiences I've had have been pretty profound and positive. But I've also, we just have to be. We have to understand that there's more there, and we can't jump on one belief system or another. And I think we need to be really grounded, and we need to talk to each other and keep each other. We just need to keep each other grounded.
I have a couple of requests. One is, when you get back from Norway, I want to hear all about it. Please call me. Let's meet for lunch. I'll have you come down to the house and meet my wife, whatever kids are around.
I would love that. I would love
Secondly, because I know your show's about over, I just have to say to you, Tusentak, Eric. Tusentak.
Tusentak. And thank you. You rock. Thank you so much. I will come down and see you. I hope all of you have a wonderful Friday evening. Stick around. The best is yet to come on KCOR. And then definitely keep track of me, because I will be posting updates from Hessdalen, and I will talk to you live 2 weeks from tonight.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the digital